I'm going to pull it up on my phone so I can see questions. We are live. Let's see if anybody's
We're live. Hi, if anybody's here yet.
Let me see, actually. Let me check on my phone. Oh, we look cute over the phone. That's a good thing. You know, some of these live shows, you'd be like, the quality be a little, you know, a little crusty, dusty. It's a little bit behind, though. Okay, so we're going to show, wait for people to come. I love that you're always like braiding your hair and doing like fun things to it. I'm so scared to do anything with my hair. I don't know why.
I don't know. I just got into it like kind of recently, like braiding my hair and doing it myself and stuff. And so I don't know. It's cool to play around with it.
Yeah. I need to stop being afraid of it. You know, sometimes I feel like with black hair, it's very intimidating. You know, it just could be a lot, especially with like braiding and stuff. We stay in there all day. Why? Why are people outside? How's quarantine life?
It's okay. I do not like being a quarantine college student. It's trash. But
yes. It's so annoying. You're not really learning anything.
Yeah, my teachers are being pretty like accommodating, but it's just annoying. I feel like it's hard to, you know, it's hard to be into it.
Yeah. Post on Instagram. Join us on my live show. This is cute. Hey, so do you finish Love from A to Z? Because I'm like, I technically didn't finish, but like, don't worry about that.
I didn't really finish, but I definitely like skimmed through, you know.
I was like, I feel like because I read it already, I was like, I know what I'm going to talk about. Like, I know what the book is about. First time I read it was on an ebook. And then Sajid, who Books on My Social Life, sent me this copy. And he actually sent me a cute little bookmark, which is made out of coffee.
Oh, that's so cute.
Right?
Sajid is the best. I love him.
We don't deserve him, honestly. Hello. Oh, we have one person here. You know what's funny? When I did my live shows before and it was late, I was like, everybody was like, I can't make it. So now we're doing it early. You're welcome.
Yay. I see a comment. Hi.
Hello for those watching. Okay, so if you can't tell already, this is the Iqra Trials live show. This month, well, the month of March, we were reading books that had a Muslim love interest. And so my co-host is the amazing MinaReads. Introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Mina. So my channel is MinaReads if you ever want to check me out. I read a lot of romance and a lot of other diverse books, whether it's fantasy, contemporary, or whatever. So yeah, that's me.
And we both ended up reading the exact same book, which is not planned. Love from A to Z by S.K. Ali. I know a couple other people were reading Love from A to Z, so comment and let us know if you also read it, just because who doesn't love Love from A to Z? This is both of our second reread, so we read it already and then we decided to read it over. I didn't finish, as I said before, but you know, I read it before. I know what's going on. So Mina, what were your thoughts on, what was your thoughts on your initial read and then what differed in the second reread?
On my initial read, I think I just was like on a high from how happy I was seeing two Muslim people in love, and it's just like amazing for me. And I think that on my second read, I really appreciated all of the different aspects of the representation, and I love the fact that these two people, they are like so grounded in their religion. I feel like sometimes with other Muslim rep is always about like the Muslim person wanting to be less Muslim or like not be happy with being Muslim. So I really appreciate that this book is like, these people are happy being Muslim and it brings them a lot of comfort and joy.
Yeah.
And I like how that like brings them together and stuff. It makes me feel good.
Yeah, it's so cute. And then, so for your reread, did you notice anything different? Like, did you miss anything?
I don't know if I necessarily noticed anything different, but I definitely came to appreciate like the family dynamics a lot more in this one.
Yeah, same.
Yeah. Okay, someone asked what it's about. It's about these two people named Adam and Zainab, and they meet on a plane. They're both on their way to Qatar. And so they meet on this plane, and it's basically them, like, they keep running into each other while they're in Qatar and falling in love and stuff. It's basically like that.
Yeah, it's a super cute halal romance. And Adam has, what is it? Multiple sclerosis?
He has multiple sclerosis.
Yes, he has MS. So it's also his journey of like coming to terms with it. It's such a good story. You know what's funny? I'm actually at the part in the book where they argue. And this is my least favorite part. I want to skip it so bad. I hate this part of the book. But yeah, it's by S.K. Ali, who is also the author of Saints and Misfits, which I haven't read, but everybody I know loves Saints and Misfits. And apparently it's going to be a sequel coming out, I think.
Really?
Yeah.
I haven't read that one either.
And someone who was it? I think it was Samaya from Samaya and Booktopia. She told me that in the sequel for Saints and Misfits, Adam and Zainab make an appearance. So I'm very excited. Okay, so what was your favorite parts of the book? And specifically like the Muslim representation? Like how did you feel about, just the nuances of love and halal dating and stuff? How'd you feel about that?
One of my favorite scenes is like near the end when they're like all made up and they decide like they want to be together and stuff, is when they're like by the beach and they're talking to each other and he's like they're kind of about to hold hands, but then they're like, no, we won't. We gotta have like a chaperone. I thought that was like so relatable. I love that. They're just so good. I love them.
And then wasn't he calling her his water? I was like, what is this?
Yes.
Oh my God, does he call her water? Like, what? Yeah, I love that scene. I feel like they showed like the normal, I feel like in the most normal way possible, how nowadays you could do the like chaperone, like halal dating. A lot of people, when they talk about that, it's a very like dated mindset. And I just mean by like, there's a lot of creative ways that you can still get to know somebody without like necessarily being alone with them. And I feel like Love from A to Z shows a really good example of how in the modern age, two young Muslim people can come together and still like fall in love and do things in a halal way. And then when you hear about what other people, it's just like, oh yeah, is y'all just sitting around in the living room with your mom and your dad, and like his mom and his dad like staring at each other mad aggressively. And I'm like, this is not fun. So I like the fact that like they went out and even like unofficially using Hannah, the little sister, as like a chaperone. They went to like museums. They went to like malls. Like they just did a lot. I think they also go to the pet shelter.
Yeah.
The dog shelter. Like they just did a lot, but it was still like getting to know each other, but not, I guess, like pushing the boundaries. So what was your rating? What was your rating? And did it change?
Oh, my star rating? No, it didn't change at all. It's still 5 stars. I love it. I wouldn't give it anything less.
Yeah, I agree. It's amazing. Was there anything that you didn't like or you would have done differently?
I don't want to say there's something I didn't like. It's something I've definitely grown to appreciate, but it's the fact that Zainab is like she's really stubborn. And I feel like she doesn't necessarily see other people's point of view. She's not really good at that. But I think that over time we see like some character development where she does come to understand Adam's point of view. Because she's definitely quick to be angry at him and think that like, oh, he's trash. And I like the fact that she kind of has to come to terms with the fact that like not everybody's perfect. Yeah. And that she could kind of help guide him and educate him in some things that he doesn't understand. Because I think that being a Muslim woman and like wearing hijab and everything is very different from being a Muslim man and like the experiences that you have. Right. So I like that they got to like bond over that and share that difficulty with each other. I thought that was really interesting.
That's why I hate the fight. This is not a spoiler. It's not like nothing crazy. It's just, they argued. But I hate this scene because it was stemmed from like just a miscommunication, just a lack of understanding because they're getting to know each other, but they don't know each other like that. And I think that was a really good scene to put, though, even though I don't like it. I liked how I'm listening to the audiobook as I'm reading, and I like how they separated, like, it's not from Adam or Zainab's side. And in the book, they go back and forth through Adam and Zainab. They both have the same journal. And so when you're reading, you go from like different points of views. But I like how this was kind of like a narration step one, like a third point of view of like what happened, because they acknowledge that both of them were really like intense, feeling a lot of things. So it's easy to like misconstrue. But I think it's kind of important to argue and like see how that person gets when they're angry, because imagine you marry somebody and you have no idea how they look when they like blow up, or how bad it is, or if this is something you can deal with. Like somebody, they may get upset and then just like storm out. And like for some people that may be like a no for them, that's like a red flag. For some people, people get like mad condescending when they're angry. Like there's just so many different things. So I think that scene was important. I think also the part where Zainab says something to him about like him being a coward for not speaking about like his illness. And even though it was very harsh, for poor little Adam, who I love so much, I think she did have a valid point about Adam being like scared. Yeah. And her delivery was off. I think he needed to hear that he was kind of being a little cowardly, a little afraid. And I think throughout the book, you notice that like that point, like that's their biggest issue, like as people. Like Adam, he's very fearful and probably too laid back. And then Zainab, she's too hot-headed. So it was just really interesting to see like that moment where both their issues just like come to full force. But even both of them were like, oh my God, we can't do this anymore. I was like, y'all had one little argument in a museum. And then poor Hannah's over there like, what's going on? Like, I just wanted to see some rocks. I loved her. She was adorable. That scene where like whenever she would pray is like the funniest thing. She's so cute. She's so adorable.
Yeah, she really reminded me of my little sister. So I just
she reminds me of my little sister too. And she's such a little sister, If any of you guys read Love from A to Z, tell us some of your thoughts. What were your favorite scenes, least favorite moments? I'm trying to think how else did I feel about it? I was worried when I first read it, my first read, that it was going to move maybe too fast, because I looked at it, I'm like, the book is not that big. And, you read about the fact that she's on spring break or whatever. And I'm just like, what's really going to happen on this little old holiday, And we all read those romance books where it's like, vacation and they do a little fling. But I was really like pleasantly surprised to see the way that SK Ali, in such a short amount of time, they still had like a genuine bond with each other. It wasn't even just the physical stuff, which they talked about, which I think was really important. A lot of Muslim people will act like sex is not a thing, or sexual attraction is something that's like taboo, when in reality it's normal. And so I was happy that they spoke about things from both perspectives.
Yeah, I definitely liked that mention of like Zainab like fantasizing about him, and like I remember there's this one scene where she has like a dream or something about like showing him her hair, and that's like the epitome of intimacy to her. I was like, I love that scene so much. I just think it's such a good scene.
Oh my God, I love that scene.
Yeah, I really like this book, and especially because I watched Elite recently, and like the representation there is so bad.
Why did you do that?
So bad.
Why would you watch Elite? For those who don't know, Elite is this weird show on Netflix, and the hijabi representation, the Muslim representation is just like whack. I didn't even watch it, but then apparently in the second season, she's like somebody sleeping with their brother. It's just,
the show is really weird. It's really wild. I think that like in the first season, Elite wasn't that bad, but then it just got super weird for sure. Ooh, there's some comments.
Oh, wow.
I also liked how the multiple sclerosis was portrayed. I didn't really know all that much about it before I read this book. So I definitely appreciated like that insight.
Yeah.
And I thought that like Adam's experience as a sick person was really interesting, how he wanted to protect his dad and like shield his dad from worrying about him and stuff. I thought that showed like how much Adam really cares about his family more than he cares about himself. And
Yeah.
that just made me feel emotional. I really like that.
Yeah, it was really sweet to just see the impact of how their life has changed after, I don't know, is it a spoiler that I'll just say somebody in his family died. And so it's really interesting to see the way that all of their lives have changed, from Adam with the illness to Hannah, like during the fight, Zainab says something like rude to Hannah, and I think Adam is like, she's had to be a big sister to me for a long time. And I was just like, oh. And then the scenes where his dad would just cry, like, I think the way they explored grief was really good, and the way that like what life looks like afterwards. For a lot of times when we read about things like death or something really like something really serious happening to a family, there's a lot of what's the word? Sometimes there's a lot of like animosity and tension, and a lot of families that have a falling out. But I think it was really refreshing to see how him and his family really just like fought so hard to stay as a unit, even with him going for school. Like they really wanted to make sure that they still had each other. And also, I love the fact that Adam was a revert. I feel like that's so important. We don't read about people. Yes. I don't know why that's not, or even if we do read about it, it's like some white girl that converted after learning about Islamic studies in school, which is fine. But we don't hear a lot about people converting, specifically men converting. We don't read a lot about Muslim men, and the fact that he was also East Asian. Like, it's just so many different narratives that we never really hear from that type of perspective. Everybody already knows that Muslims are all around the world, but I loved seeing a brown Desi girl and an Asian guy. I love that. Like,
I really did love that too. And I definitely connected to it as a revert myself. I thought that it was very kind of emotional to see the reasons that Adam himself converted, and how like his conversion made him feel so connected. And I also like the fact that it was definitely his choice. Like, he was really young when he decided to convert, but I think that it was so beautiful in the scenes where he talks about his dad praying and how he wanted to find more peace that his dad seemed to have on his face when he prayed. I thought that was like so beautiful, and it's definitely something that I connected to a lot, which made me feel like so seen. I guess.
I love that. It was just the way that he just described his relationship with Islam. I think this is something we've been missing from a lot of Muslim representation. For a lot of us, well, obviously can't speak for everybody, but I can say that for a lot of us, especially as we're teenagers and a little bit older, it's less about, oh, my parent is making me, or society is making me, just because you're older now. So it's a lot of, I choose this. And I think it's really refreshing to see this narrative of how Islam is it's not like this crazy aspect of their lives. Like, they're just Muslim. And so they just operate their lives in a certain way, and it's not the end of the world. I'm reading some of these comments. French fries will never be the same for me.
Literally.
Oh my gosh, the scenes. Like, some of the flashbacks, when I first read it, it was a little bit annoying. I'm not going to lie. I was like, okay, why do we keep going back? But then now I'm reading it again.
Honestly, I hate flashbacks.
I don't like flashbacks, because I'm just like, okay. And this book had a lot of flashbacks, but it was so important. And I think the way SincerelyTahiry like weaved it into the story, I was like, I'm crying about French fries. Like, what's happening? Oh my gosh. I love those scenes. I do want to talk a little bit about Zainab with her teacher and like her friends, like her life back in Indiana. So without kind of being too spoily, Zainab had a teacher who was pretty much very Islamophobic. And so throughout the book, she's trying to navigate how to deal with him as her teacher, and like certain assignments that he has them do. It's just like really all over the place. What I can say is that I connected to Zainab's anger. And it was interesting to see that from a different perspective, because that's often how I feel like as a Black woman, like just having so much, sometimes even like rage about how we're treated in the world. And so it was really interesting to see that type of anger in somebody else, just because, Black women, we get the narrative of being like angry and always having an attitude. And even in the book, you see like her family also have always been like, Zainab's the angry one. Zainab's the angry one. Like she's always upset. She's always mad. And I think she brought a kind of like dignity to that. Like somebody commented about how her aunt told her it's okay to care so much and get mad. And that's literally something you never hear. I feel like as a Black woman, I've never been told that it's okay for me to be angry. And so reading it, it was just really satisfying to hear that people acknowledged her feelings and they didn't play it off. You know, even when her parents kind of talked about her being angry, they didn't necessarily like, I wouldn't say they necessarily tried to change her. Like everybody just acknowledged that she's just really passionate, even her friends. And even after Adam faced it for the first time, he was just like, oh, okay, she just like feels everything really intensely and really passionately. So I like the way that they explored like her feelings and stuff.
I definitely felt that because I was 100% Zainab when I was in high school. I had this one teacher in my AP language class, and the whole school year, she kept on like assigning these readings that were like pretty much like biased, and it was talking all about like how oppressed Muslim women are, and they're so oppressed and their lives are so terrible. And I mean, there are a lot of people who are Muslim in certain countries who are experiencing a lot of oppression and stuff like that, but it didn't have like an objective lens, you know. It was very much steeped in Islamophobia, and I was always kind of trying to convey that to my teacher, and my teacher just didn't get it. And she was like, yeah, you know, I spent time in Iran and I know everything there is to know about being Muslim. I'm like, no, you don't. You don't. And you don't get to speak for how every Muslim woman is going to feel just because some Muslim women sadly are oppressed.
Right.
But I think it's more like a cultural thing than it is to do with what Islam as a religion is really teaching. So I definitely appreciated Zainab's anger and like her feelings about this teacher. I thought that it was like really real.
Yeah. I also liked her friend group. Like her relationships with her friends were based out of her need for like social justice and wanting to just make things right. And I love that because I felt like it was a really genuine connection, even when she was a little bit jealous of her friend for making other friends back home. Like it was just so normal. I think that the underlying tone of this is just like normal. Like Zainab was still just a normal high school girl dealing with normal things. You know, she also had a crush and, you know, she's having issues with her teacher at school, like very normal things that everybody goes through. And I think it's nice to just see Muslim people as not other, you know. It was like, she's Muslim.
Yeah, I want to relate this back to one of the comments that I see, and it says, I like how S.K. Ali was able to handle such heavy topics while writing a cute romance, and I definitely agree. I feel like the strength of this book is that there is representation in it, but it doesn't feel like that's the only point. Is to be representation. It just feels like, you know, they're telling a story and they're giving us characters and their lives and their emotions without it just feeling like, you know, this is my message that Muslims are valid. It's like, no, you know, this is just a cute story about two Muslim people in their life. And I think that that was like one of the strongest points about it for me. It didn't feel like too preachy or anything like that. It didn't feel like it had some super strong message. It just was like, I'm a romance and the characters are Muslim and you're just going to have to deal with that. And I really appreciate that so much.
Yeah. And I think about like the audience. I feel like I'm naturally kind of not drifting away from YA, but just I'm looking for something a little bit more mature. But I think about this as like a high schooler like would read this, or even just like a young girl that's looking for like a romance story. And I think this just would be so relatable for them, because even the conversations that she has with what's the girl's name? When she was on FaceTime with Cavi, and then the girl Nomi, I think that's her name, was there in the background. That conversation she had with her about white feminism, and like the way that SK Ali like brought that up, it wasn't, even that moment was like as a teaching moment, but it still kind of felt very natural. Like she related it to something she learned in class, and just things like that is just really important for us to see, because a lot of the times with like discrimination, it's never really these big things. For a lot of us, it's just little moments that build up. And I think if this whole book was just like, I'm Muslim and you can't do that, and it was more about people had a problem with Zainab being Muslim rather than she having a problem with being Muslim, which I feel like is a lot more relatable to most people. Like they just want to live their life, you know,
Mm-hmm.
pray, mind
Yeah.
their business, wear their hijab, and then other people were really bothered by it. But I really did like it. I'm trying to think what else did I want to talk about. Oh, one other point that I really liked was that their romance wasn't necessarily centered on like each other, if that makes sense. They were still individuals. And I feel like in a lot of romance books, people, especially the women, they lose themselves in the romance, in the other guy. And Zainab was very much Zainab from like start to end. Like, yeah, she had like character developments and she grew a little bit, but she was still fundamentally the same person. And I think even Adam, he was himself. And a lot of the book, it's not just a romance. Yes, they interact with each other, but we also see a good portion of the book of them apart. And you rarely see that in romance books. I like seeing their thoughts about like Zainab being like, oh, like thinking about him. Or I think male perspectives in romance books we're really lacking on that. Like I want to read more about male perspectives because, you know, a lot of romance books are written by women. So, but it is nice to hear like a guy perspective. And even the way he talked about her, I was like, oh, this is cute. Because so many girls, they want to know, like, what are guys thinking? Like, how does he feel about me? And it was just so cute to see that, like, reflected back on to Zainab. And I think this is really different for her as a hijabi. Like, she talks about how comfortable she was just talking about being Muslim with Adam. And those little moments, like, we don't even realize that we're, like, missing out on until we're with other Muslim people. Like, she mentioned something about, like, I think she brought up how her mom would think that like something was like a jinn when something went missing in her house or something like that. And just like how that's a normal thing for her to bring up. And she really didn't feel so like othered or different or weird, or she didn't have to over explain stuff, which can also be a little bit annoying. This is a side remark. I don't know if this is really important to anybody, but when she was on the FaceTime with Cavi done put her on the phone with everybody in this school. I'm like, she don't have no hijab on. And you over here like, hey, Zainab, say hi to everybody. I was like,
yeah, that was a mess.
I was like, okay. And I did think that it was a little bit too much teaching to Kathy just specifically because they were friends. So I'm like, why y'all still having this conversation about the fact that her wearing hijab or not wearing hijab doesn't determine her Muslim identity? I'm like, okay, Kathy, I don't know what y'all was talking about, but yes. Somebody said, I love that they compliment each other rather than complete/fix each other. That's the number one issue with, I feel like, Muslim love interest in books. If you want to talk about like the white savior trope, that's literally always what happens. The girl is coming from a place of like, fix me, I'm broken, I need you to save me, rather than being like, okay, this is who I am and what can you add to me? Like that is the reason why I feel like their romance was so authentic, rather than other romances that I've read of.
Yeah, I feel like most Muslim romances, they tend to include like a Muslim girl and then like a Christian guy, and he's typically white. And it's always about
it's just a new trend now. I don't know where that came from. There's like mad Muslim girls and Jewish guys in books. I don't know where that's coming from, but
and it's just like, you know, he's gonna come in and like liberate her, and she's gonna go to her first party and have her first kiss and like all this other stuff. And it's not to say that I think that all this stuff is like the worst thing ever, but I feel like it always frames it like she had no life, no existence prior to this person entering her life. And I just hate that. I don't think that that's good. And I don't feel like it's representative of what Muslim women are really like. I don't know. I really like the fact that this is just like two people who feel like really well-rounded individuals who complement each other, like that comment said.
I'm also kind of tired of seeing women find love when they're broken. Like, can we find love when I'm like, you know, whole and at peace, you know, like, Oh, that's a good point. Somebody said they loved how the book was set in a Muslim country. Yeah, I love that.
I really like that too. And I like how the book kind of touches on like imperialism, because even though it is set in a Muslim country, she is staying with her aunt who lives in kind of like an American like compound. Basically, it's kind of like an apartment, but mostly Americans and like immigrants live there. And so they kind of impose these certain laws that make it harder for Muslim people to live their regular life. So when Zainab is swimming, they're like, oh, you know, you can't wear like wear a burkini. You have to wear something different. And I thought that was really interesting too.
And even the workers that they mentioned, like it was so many workers from other countries and they weren't being paid like good money. And you hear that a lot, I feel like, in UAE, like a lot of the workers and the construction workers there are not they're not from out of countries. They're from, you know, India or Pakistan or, you know, Jamaica, other countries, and they come to do labor, but they're often treated like crap. And I think that was important to see because the Muslim world is, of course, not perfect either. And also just the way that like imperialism and colonialism affects other parts of the world, because we know how it affects us living in America. But I think it was interesting to see how that affected a whole other country, and how when you go outside of the US, you still see that a lot of places are trying to fit up to like American standards and live like an American way of life. I think that was really interesting.
Yeah.
Did anybody read any other books? I know Mina said you had another book you wanted to talk about, but if anybody in the comments read other books that wasn't Love from A to Z, please tell us what your thoughts were and what books those were.
This comment says, I love how she touched on a lot of things without trying to do too much. Yeah, we really appreciated that too. I like that she was able to just like seamlessly provide all of this conversation. And I definitely think that's the kind of book that if you don't know much about Muslims or like Muslim culture, Muslim practices, I think that it is something that could be like a learning tool without being, you know, and not being too much.
Yeah.
I think that she definitely put enough story and chemistry into the story and everything without it being like, you know, I don't know.
It was just like, she was like, you know, when I walk into a building, I gotta go with my right foot, and like, you know, like I say, you know, Bismillah before I eat, and like it was just like, this is what, you know, my life is like as a Muslim, and it's not, you know, it's not nothing crazy. It's just, this is my normal. And I think that was really important to see. I also feel like a lot of people that aren't Muslim would definitely be able to get a good introduction to what I feel like modern, everyday, like just the experiences of obviously Muslim people. They're in the East, but they're not. Yeah. You know, it's different. Oh wow, it's Sajid. Hi, Sajid. We stand him. We love him. Go watch our live show if you didn't. That one was hilarious. Apparently there was like jinns on my computer. I don't even want to talk about it. Like, it was crazy. So what was the other book you read, Mina?
So the other book that I read is Aisha at Last by Uzma Jalaluddin. So this book is like a Pride and Prejudice retelling. And I think if you read Pride and Prejudice, you're really going to like this. If you like the dynamic between Liz and Darcy and how they definitely have like a really antagonistic relationship. Yeah. And a lot of the build in their relationship happens when they're apart and like thinking about each other and like pining away for each other. So I think if you're into that kind of story, you'll definitely like this. And it talks a little bit about like how Muslims can hate each other in a way, like some of the like internalized, I don't know how to describe it, but like internalized Islamophobia, because the main woman in here, Aisha, she is, I guess you would say she's a bit more liberal and progressive, and the guy Khalid, he's a bit more what's it called, he's just like a bit more conservative, I guess, because his mother is really strict. And so they kind of are just coming from two very different perspectives. And so they clash over that. And it's interesting because Aisha kind of has to learn to not necessarily accept him, because he doesn't do anything that's like bad per se. He just has like, you know, like, oh, you know, I don't want to shake hands with a woman because it's like, you know, some people just don't do that. They don't touch with opposite sex and everything. And that is what it is. And so he has practices like that. And then Aisha is like, well, that just means you don't respect me as a woman. And it's just like these interesting conversations that they have with each other that I thought was like cool. I appreciated it.
I like that. I think we don't talk a lot about the nuances that goes into like the Muslim community. I think that's another reason why it's an issue that we don't see a lot of Muslim and Muslim romances, because the assumption that just because somebody else is Muslim means that there's going to be a successful relationship, like that's not the case at all. For a lot of people, their standard is, oh, they're Muslim, that's it. Like, what does that mean? Like, that's not, like, are you compatible, like, spiritually? Like, do you have the same beliefs and practices even within Islam? Like, there's so many different types of ways that people can practice. And I think it's just a little bit naive to be like, oh, but we're all Muslim, like that, you know, like it's just not realistic. So I really like that aspect of it. I haven't read Aisha at Last, but it's definitely on my list. I saved it on Scribd. If you don't know, Scribd is doing 30 free days of membership. Well, it's not a membership, but you don't have to sign up with like a credit card or anything. So I've just been saving mad books to read. Like all I've been doing is sitting there like saving books. That's about it. Has anybody read Aisha at Last? I've heard a lot of good things about it. And
I liked it. I gave it like 4 stars. I definitely think that you will like it if you like Pride and Prejudice.
Yeah.
And I also think it's really funny. The people there, Daisy, and I think that is really like interesting to see those aspects of their culture as well as like their practices as Muslims and everything like that. And I just love them. Like they just have like a weird relationship with each other. They're always arguing and stuff, but it's just so funny. And I just appreciated them a lot. And it definitely kind of has like some Bollywood film type.
I love that.
Yeah, so it's really like, I think that you guys will enjoy it.
Yeah, everybody go get Aisha at Last. We'll buddy read together. We're just gonna do it. No, I'm really excited to read it. That sounds so good. And I'm such a historical fiction like type of girl. All I do is watch like old historical shows, like literally pick a country, pick a part of the world, and I've watched like a historical show or like read a historical book. I also think that historical fiction is kind of slept on.
Yeah.
Like people don't really appreciate it. And it's not even always about like, oh, like the practices and the beliefs are kind of backwards. Like sometimes it's really good. It's really popping. Yeah, I think I'm gonna get Aisha at Last. It sounds really good. So what are your thoughts on Muslim love interest in general, like Muslims in romance books? How do you feel about that? Or any books that you're interested in reading that have a Muslim love interest?
Yes, there is one that I'm interested in reading, but I'm kind of scared to read it. It's called The Chai Factor by Farah Heron, I think. And I'm interested in that, but I'm not sure how I'm going to feel about it. I know that the girl in it is Muslim, and then her love interest is like a white guy, and I'm always a little bit skeptical about those.
Yeah.
Aisha at Last, it isn't historical. It's contemporary.
Yeah, it's a historical, like, it's based off of Pride and Prejudice, though, but it's like a...
Yeah, it's contemporary.
If you like historical fiction in general, I feel like, and like Mina was saying about, you know, if you like Pride and Prejudice, you're probably like... So what were you saying about that book?
I don't know. I lost my train of thought.
Something about the white guy.
Oh yeah. So The Chai Factor. It's about a girl and a white guy. I think it's supposed to be like a hate to love romance thing. I don't really know all that much about it, but I feel a little bit skeptical about it. I've heard that the representation, like the Muslim representation, is just not super great. But I mean, I think the author is Muslim, so she might just be drawing from her own personal experiences. I think that the character is just not like super religious. Like, you know, when you grow up Muslim, but maybe like later in life you drift away from certain practices. Yeah, so I think that it might be kind of a story like that. So I want to read that soon, but I haven't gotten around to it yet.
You know what I can say that's, I feel like, a bit frustrating? I think a lot of people try to make it seem like the biggest issue is that the guy is not Muslim, which is can be an issue for some people, but I don't think that's the biggest issue. I think the biggest issue is really that the girl usually isn't practicing or doesn't necessarily have a positive relationship with her Islamic identity. And I think that's the issue, because you know that their relationship is stemming from her denying a part of herself. I feel like in the book All American Muslim Girl by Nadine Jolie Courtney, if you haven't read it, please read it. It's like the best Muslim story I've ever read in my life. And the main character, she's learning to like practice, and even though she was born Muslim, she wasn't raised Muslim. So she's learning things about Islam, and she's a part of this like all-girl Muslim study group. But she also has a boyfriend, and they talk about her being Muslim. And so it's not like she's with him to try to hide the fact that she's Muslim or to try to like assimilate into whatever his world is. And they're also Southern. So that's a whole nother aspect of it. And I really like that as an example, because I don't know, it doesn't make me feel comfortable that when you see a lot of these books, with a girl that has like negative feelings about herself, or just anybody that has any negative feelings about any part of themselves, like that is more often than not going to negatively impact the relationship. And for a lot of people in real life, that's how a lot of people end up being like, how am I going to say this? That's how people find themselves in like situations where they probably otherwise wouldn't be, you know, just in regards to like if you're really insecure, and sometimes you can attract somebody that's like abusive, or they prey on that aspect of it, you know? So yeah, I think that's really my issue. Like, why does it have to be that? Like, why does she have to hate that? Or why is it like not a thing? Another book is Yes, No, Maybe So by Becky Albertalli and Aisha Saeed. I didn't read it, and I don't really want to read it, but I just felt like it was a little weird how they're kind of centered around the fact that it was during Ramadan, but there was no other kind of talks about her being Muslim. I felt like I was reading some of the reviews. I was like, how is this about Ramadan? But
oh, thank you. Someone said they like my hair.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad they like my outfit. Thrifting video coming soon.
Yay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I was just talking about All American Muslim Girl is amazing. Also, I said this in my Muslim Representation Sucks video. Why is white always the default? Like, why is it always a white guy? Like, does no other race exist? Like, I just really want to know. And it was always a brown girl, always a white guy. Like, the guy can't be like black or like, you know, East Asian or, you know, Arab. Like, it's just always a brown Muslim girl with a white guy. I don't know what that's about.
Monty says, don't read Yes, No, Maybe So.
Yeah, that's what I've been seeing. Everybody's like, just don't read it. But also, I'm not going to attack her as a person because I don't know her. But Aisha Saeed's writing, I can tell it's very consistent in regards to her Muslim representation. So I just feel like one of her books is about a girl who her parents want to have her an arranged marriage, and she's like in Pakistan or something, and she like runs away. And I'm just like, what? It's like, what? Okay.
Yeah. That Yes, No, Maybe So book, that sounds weird though that it's said during Ramadan, because I thought that was about them like what's it called? They're like canvassing or whatever for a political campaign. That would be so hard to do during Ramadan. Like, I wonder if it discusses that, like the experience of being out in the sun all day and you can't eat or drink anything.
Yeah, like, are we talking about that? Like, like, is she going to the masjid? Like, I don't know. If you've read the book, please let us know. But it just sounds weird. It sounds a little bit weird, a little off. So say it louder, sis. Period. I'm trying to think what other books that have Muslim love interests. I feel like everybody knows my issues with, what is her name? The author of Internment. Everybody knows I don't like Internment. Like, it's not a surprise.
I know that you don't like that book, but like, rehash it for me. What don't you like about it?
So if you don't know, Internment is, I'm going to find her name, but Internment is about, it's like a 15-minute glimpse into the future and a version of America where Muslim people are put into like internment camps. And the main girl, I think her name is Layla, she, you know, finds her voice and something like that. She tries to save her family from being in this internment camp. However, literally one of the biggest issues from the start of the book, she has a white Jewish boyfriend. And there's like a curfew, and they start the book with her sneaking out to go see him. And I'm like, wait, okay. So it's like the end of the world for you. Mind you, not him. He's in his house. Like, for you, Miss Muslim Girl. And you're telling me that you are going to literally risk your family's safety by sitting here thinking she's Harriet Tubman, Underground Railroad, sneaking around in the night to get to your boyfriend's house for what? They kissed and then she went home. Like, I was just like, okay. That I think somebody saw her, and that's how her family got put into the internment camp. And then throughout the book, she's like sending him secret messages. Like, and I'm just like,
girl, it's really not worth it.
No, it's not. No, it's not. But my main issue was I just felt like, and maybe Samir Ahmed, that's her name. Thank you for that. Here's my thing. Whether you're religious or not, I feel like end of the world type stuff makes everybody pray, call out to God, to whatever, because they're just like, you know, it's like really traumatizing stuff. Like people went missing in the internment camps. Like, you saw them one day, then they got dragged off by the guards. You never saw them again. Like, really scary stuff. And like, you don't got nothing to say to God? Like, you're not gonna pray not once? Like, not one dua? Like, not one? Like, I know it just wasn't realistic to me, because I feel like even an atheist in a time where literally people being murdered and all types of stuff around you is gonna be like, listen, I don't know if you're up there, but it was just kind of unrealistic. And her relationship with Islam was through her parents, which for the first part of the book, I was like, okay, I understand. But then I was just like, and now what? Like, she kept saying that her Muslim identity was really important to her, but I didn't see why. Like, I feel like everybody has their own relationship with Islam or with Allah, and for whatever that reason is. And I just didn't, she kept saying that she was like so proud to be Muslim, but she was trying to convince me. I just didn't believe it. I'm like, okay, like, all right. But what I can say about what I can say about internment was the way the camps were like set up. They separated the Muslim people by race. And I think that was really interesting. That was the one part I was like, okay, yes, please acknowledge the racism in Muslim communities. Like, they were just talking about how like all the Arabs are over there, or like these people over there, they couldn't like sit with each other, eat with each other. And just the ways that, like, I guess they were talking about the ways that like in her community, they were talking about, the Black Muslims or the other Muslims. She also did say that there was also like a Muslim like Quran group or class going on, and Layla did mention how she really admired the Black Muslim girls in that group, because not only were they Black, but they also wore hijab. And she was like, wow, like they have such a strong connection with their faith, and like I really admire that. Like, I wish I could have that. But then it was like nothing. I'm like, why didn't you go join the group? Like, it was like she was trying to convince herself or us that she was like, no, like I'm never, like they was like, just say you're not Muslim, like you don't wear hijab anyway, blah, blah, blah. She's like, never. And then I'm reading the book and I'm like, so you're going through all of this, why? Like, but why do you love being Muslim so much? And that's something I felt like was missing. Like, that was the biggest thing for me. Like, whether you practice or not even if you practice, however you practice, at the end of the day, if you are still, I feel like, calling yourself Muslim, claiming yourself to be Muslim, it has to be a reason for you to still want to do that. And the reason doesn't have to make sense to me or anybody else, but like, what is the thing that makes you so proud to still call yourself Muslim? Like, whatever it is, like, I don't, you need to justify yourself to me, but it just wasn't realistic.
Yeah.
It was crazy. It was, don't read Internment. But I'm reading Internment soon. I think the challenge for August is to read a book that you feel like has bad Muslim representation. So that's the only reason why I still own it. Just I'm gonna torture myself. Wait, what are these comments?
Yeah, that's just making me think about Elite, because like recently I just rewatched the whole series, because it's just something that you could just like obsess over really quick, and then you finish the series and it's like, why did I do that to myself?
Interesting. And I heard about the stuff. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, it's very weird, but I think that that's one of the things that stood out to me about the character Nadia, is that in the first season, she starts it like wearing hijab, and she seems really comfortable being Muslim and cool with everything. And then at the school, they like basically force her to take off her hijab, because they're like, it doesn't conform with our like our school's uniform policy or whatever. So she has to take her hijab off when she goes to school. So that becomes like a part of her day-to-day life. And they actually make it seem like it's a really hard thing for her, and she kind of cries when she takes off her hijab and everything like that. So I'm thinking that it's going to be like a nuanced kind of discussion of hijab and what it means to her, or like her religion or anything like that. But kind of after that moment happens, she just be taking her hijab on and off whenever it pleases her. And she just like, it goes with my outfit today it don't. And she just is doing whatever she wants. And it kind of like, we never discuss that, like what that means to her, or have her feelings about her religion or hijab change or anything.
Why?
Yeah, there's never any real like nuance to that. So I don't want to judge other Muslims and their experiences, because like obviously I don't cover, so that's like, I can't judge other people for their relationship with hijab, because I have my own relationship with hijab. But I just think that it would have been better representation if they had just described her feelings or shown any kind of internal struggle, but they just didn't. It just was like, yeah, she's over it.
Like, honestly, I think the worst part is that we're missing the what's the word? we're missing like real character development. I feel like that's another issue with a lot of these, like a lot of Muslim representation, specifically with women. It's like y'all are not fleshing out these characters. So no matter if it's a book, a movie, a TV show, like it's just for the most part bad. Like it's just not even good because they just use the fact that they're Muslim for like drama. Or, you know, them taking off their hijab or going with like a white guy. It's just for drama. But it's like really bad characterization because, okay, like you're Muslim. Great. Like, is that supposed to mean, if that doesn't mean anything to you, or if I don't know how much that means to you, why does that, it's supposed to mean something to me? Like, that's great. Like, congrats. I don't know what I'm supposed to do with that information. Oh yeah, she's just Muslim. Okay. Sound like like I don't know what are we supposed to do with this? It's a lack of like really diving into a character. And I think another issue is that it's not a lot of Muslim people really in these spaces or acting as gatekeepers to these industries. Like, of course, with some of the books, you notice it's a lot of people's personal experiences with Islam, which is obviously their own thing. That's not something I would ever judge. But I think a lot of us are struggling with the fact that that's the only version of Muslims that we see. Like, there's definitely not an even type of representation between people that practice a lot or don't practice enough, or even people that are like in the middle, like just completely a nuanced view of what it means to be Muslim. And I think every story is valid, but it is very frustrating how we only see the same story. And you're just like, why are you trying to convince me? Like, you trying to convince me of something? Like, you trying to tell me there's something wrong with me because I, you know, like to practice, or that my, you know, my dad is not forcing me to wear hijab. Like, I don't know what it is. It just gets kind of weird. And it just messes up the story. It's like, you might as well have not made them Muslim. Like, you still didn't divest any time into their character. Like, we're reading books, watching movies, watching shows, and I still don't know like anything about this Muslim character. But then you want me to watch it because you want to be like, oh, look, diverse representation. Yeah. And it's not at all.
I feel like a lot of times things want to be diverse on the surface, and I hate that. That makes me so angry. It's just like, there's this one book that came out like somewhat recently, and it's called I Wish You All the Best. And it's about like a non-binary character, and their love interest is like a Black guy.
Mason, is that their name?
Yeah, it's out. I think the author's name is like Mason Deaver, or something like that. And I thought that book was like, it was okay, you know, it was cool. I liked it. I'm glad for like the non-binary rep and everything. Yeah. But the thing about that, I didn't feel, because the author is white, and I didn't feel like they invested any time or attention into the love interest character, like his identity as a Black man. There was just no discussion of that. And I feel like it sucks. It's annoying to me to see like diversity for the sake of it without ever diving into it. Like, how is this affecting his life or anything like that? It's just like, oh, you know, he's going to be brown on the cover so that I can get diversity.
Like, I don't. It's not just, unfortunately, like the way our society has gone, your race is not just skin deep. It's not just about the color of your skin or even like your physical features. It's not that. And I think Sajid has a really good video about like representation versus visibility. If you haven't watched it, please go watch it. But when I was watching that video, I was just like, yes, this is exactly what I feel like. It's like you want my, like, whether my money, like my time, like my support, but there's no real diversity happening here. And when I did my, if you watched my Hollow review video, like, please go watch it, but don't watch the movie. Don't watch the movie. But I talked about how somebody from Teen Vogue reached out to me for an interview about like Muslim representation and how I felt about the movie. And then I did my interview, and then they cut it out. And so the girl who they kept in the interview, she literally said verbatim, she was like, I'd rather see bad Muslim representation than no Muslim representation. And I was like, is just seeing somebody wear hijab so satisfying? Like, what does that mean? Like, I'm not understanding. Why is it just about like, look, a Black person, look, like, you know, for what?
I can't believe that. I don't understand why people have that kind of opinion. I don't understand it. It doesn't make sense to me, because you know, I would rather not be somewhere than see myself and have the promise of seeing myself and then it be a disrespectful representation of who I am or who people who look like me are. I just don't get that. Like,
it's false expectations. And even for a lot, I think for a lot of like young people growing up, it's really, I feel like, harmful to see. Like, you would think it's good representation, or you think it's something somebody can relate to, whether it's because they have the same race as you, same sexuality, same background, whatever, and it's just lackluster. It's really frustrating because you just feel like, okay, was there something wrong with me that everyone that I'm seeing in these portrayals, they act like this, or they look like this, or they do this, and I don't. It's kind of, you feel like cheated, you know? Like, I wanted to see representation. Where is it at? And there's no like divulging into their character, but also visibility is not the worst thing in the world. Like, what's that show? If anybody watches the show Legacies on CW, like a spinoff of the original, which is a spinoff of Vampire Diaries, but there's a hijabi character and she's always in the background. And for me, it's good enough that I just see her, because I honestly worry that if they gave her lines, she'd be like, yeah, I take this off as soon as my father leaves. And I'm just like, I don't want to hear it. So sometimes it's good enough to just be like, I see you. But the lying and like the misleadingness, I think that's where a lot of us feel like cheated. You're just like, why are you making it seem like she got a bigger role than she does? You know, why are we, what is this about? I feel like some people are so desperate to be accepted. Like, how much better is bad representation? How does this benefit? Yeah. That's another aspect, like just internalized, just Islamophobia. And also, I think a lot of us still struggle with feeling proud of our Muslim identity while also navigating these spaces, which are usually like white or, you know, racist and whatever space is. It's a really difficult thing to like deal with. But I don't know. I think if we keep the expectations really low, we're going to keep getting like shitty stuff, you know? If we're just going to keep saying like, oh yeah, it's fine, just throw a scarf on her, or like, kind of like the Barnes and Noble's Black History Month thing, like just paint their stuff black. It's fine. We don't care. Like, if we keep doing that, that's what's going to keep giving us. That shit. I don't even want to talk about that. I had like pictures on my phone for a really long time. If you don't know, Barnes and Noble's did like a whole diverse thing for Black History Month.
That just made me so mad because there's so many diverse authors that they could have highlighted. They could have just like reprinted some out of print literature by Black authors for Black History Month, and that would have been an amazing initiative. It has like, you know, good qualities, because I know that like having cool illustrated covers is definitely what's selling books these days. And so I understand the concept, but why would you give all of these white people and their estates more money for their racist books using the faces of people of color to sell? Like, it doesn't make any sense.
Some of these books, the main character is calling somebody a N-word with a hard R, and you put a Black person on the cover, and then imagine a Black child reads that. That's traumatizing. Like, what? Oh, that was a mess.
That's a mess.
Yeah. Or I just won't support it. You know, I think be honest from the get-go, and then I can make the decision on whether or not I want to support or not. But to use people to like for their money, because I know a lot of us are really looking for representation, looking for diversity, but to then use us is just kind of like, for example, I don't read any of Aisha Saeed's books. I don't read any of Samir Ahmed's books. Like, these are just decisions that I've decided to make. Same thing with like, I really wish I didn't watch Hala, but oh, what's going on with Barnes and Noble? Oh, they just did these like covers. They took like classic books. So like there was like a Frankenstein one, Romeo and Juliet, like just those classic stories. And then they put like diverse characters on the cover instead of the original white cast. And then they thought that people were going to be okay with that, but it was these same books. It's not like you had diverse representation in the books. It was just, they were just Black and brown people on the cover, which is just shady and messy. And of course they launched it in New York, and I'm very frustrated about that. But another thing why that was an issue was because it was Black History Month. It's not Diverse History Month. I don't know what that's about now, I feel like there's a bit of erasure going on amongst the people of color community. And now it's just, oh, we're all POC. And I'm like, yeah, no, but you definitely experience a different type of racism or even privilege because you're not Black.
Mm-hmm.
We're not the same thing. So even so, I'm like, Black History Month, I saw only like 3 Black people on the covers. Like, I was very confused. Yeah, that
I
was.
want to respond to this one comment from Leanne where she says, I'm almost tempted to say that I'll read your all-white cast if you're not going to rep minorities and marginalizations respectfully. And I definitely agree with that. I feel like we've gotten to this place in publishing where authors are like, okay, diverse stories are what's selling and people want diverse stories, so I'm going to write a diverse story. And they'll be like a white author. And I don't personally like that because I would like more own voices work because I want own voices, artists, and authors to be getting their coin. Like, you can't make space in publishing for people of color to be making money and become successful authors if white authors are getting the opportunity to write white characters and characters of color.
Yeah.
And that is really bothers me. So I would definitely prefer to read all white cast from a white person and then get my representation from an own voices creator because they deserve my money just as much as anybody else.
Yeah, it's super frustrating because of course we're telling these major like authors and even publishers to include more diverse representation. Like I went to the Chain of Gold release event in Union Square, and somebody asked Cassandra Clare about the lack of diversity in her stories. And her response was, I'm not going to lie, like I love Cassie, but her response was kind of BS. She was like, you know, like that's why I made Cordelia the center of the book because she's like half Iranian, half white, whatever. And then she was kind of just like, oh, well, you know, a lot of my cast, they were already white. So it's like hard to introduce like a person of color. Like that was kind of her answer. But of course we want people like Cassandra Clare who has such a massive audience to write more people of color. However, there's a space for that doesn't take away from own voices representation. Like it doesn't, like they'll market that to people of color or people that are looking for a certain type of representation rather than just like giving a lot of support and encouragement to own voices writers. And I feel like that's just mad, like deceitful. It's like, why does your one Black or gay or Muslim side character in your mainly white novel more important than a story written by a Black or a Muslim or a gay person and that whole novel centering around like that identity, you know? Monty said, Jesse said something similar about being happy to read authors just write white people. Yeah, then not write characters of color poorly. Yeah, for sure, because do what you do best, really. And even if you're going to add like a Black person or somebody that's a non-white person in your story, you can still do that in a way that's like tasteful, you know? Like I read, it's called The Raven and the Dove. Yeah, The Raven and the Dove. If anybody has read it, I think it just came out. I read it, and the main female protagonist, she's Black and she's dark skinned and she has kinky hair. And the way they describe her, the author is white. The way that the author describes her is like really beautiful. I love the words she uses. And I love that she has like, you know, this Black girl on the cover, but also her race was not a crazy part of the book, which I also liked. I feel like white authors need to stick to that lane, you know, of not like, you don't have to like overstep your boundaries. Like, don't do what you don't know how to do. Nobody's asking you for that. We don't need to talk about that. Similar to in Chain of Gold, like I mentioned, Cordelia, the main character, is half Iranian and half white. And when somebody in the audience asked Cassandra Clare that question, her co-host was like, oh, but you also talk about the fact that Cordelia's brother, he dyes his hair blonde and he has like, you know, he's trying to assimilate and trying to be white or whatever. And I just felt like kind of weird in that moment because why were you have another white woman telling you like, yeah, no, you don't have issues with like representation because look, you talk about assimilation. And it was just weird. It was just really weird. Somebody in the audience kind of yelled out, oh, like, no, they were like, oh, you know, I know it's hard to write about Black people, other people of color during these times. And then somebody had to yell out, they was like, girl, we existed then too. Like, what are you talking about? It's just weird. There's no, you can tell. It was a mess. Like, there's a lot of people that write books or they create content or any type of creative work, and you can tell that there's not enough own voices people in these rooms. Like, there's nobody before this gets out to the world being like, I think this is a problem. And that's because the publishing industry is largely still just white.
Yeah, I would definitely respect Cassandra Clare if she just was like, you know what, I don't feel like it's my lane to write certain characters and I don't want to represent them poorly.
Right.
So, this is why I don't do blah, blah, blah. And then say, support some own voices authors and try to uplift some other authors. I think that would be such a great thing that she could do.
Yeah.
But when you see authors not doing things like that, it's like I'm side-eyeing you for patting yourself on the back too much for doing the bare minimum,
White women love patting themselves on the back. These are facts. So I said, don't mess with our story. If you're going to write any other people's story, you need to be doing your research. That is also very correct. People are not doing research when writing these books because they're just like, oh, diversity. What are you writing about? Like, do you even know what you're saying? Who are your beta readers? Like, who was your editor? Like, what are we talking about before we put out these works? That can sometimes be really harmful. Like, that's another reason why I stayed away from a lot of Muslim books. If you guys don't know, the reason why I started the Iqra Trials is because for a very long time, I purposely stayed away from Muslim books or books that had Muslim people in it because it was just really harmful for my own Muslim identity. And it was just really bad for me to see, like, damn, every time I see a Muslim girl, she's trying to run away from her problems to go be with a white guy. Every time I see a Muslim person, they're either portrayed as a stereotype, like as a terrorist, or they hate themselves. And it was just really harmful stuff. What's somebody say? I see so many white authors talk about how to write diversely and trying to be applauded for basically just catering to POC as consumers, not as people. That is, I think that's the point. They're looking at diversity as another means of, getting income or, just another way to like monetize it, but not with a lot of the care and the effort that goes into really creating a good story featuring own voices, individuals. And you can tell like the difference between reading a book by somebody that is of that background and somebody just like throwing in, they're like out of their depths.
Yeah.
Ooh, this was fun. We just started talking about anything. If you guys have any last minute like questions or thoughts, please add this just because I don't want to keep y'all here all day, even though I could talk about Muslim representation and diversity for forever. The challenge for next month is to wait. Let me not embarrass myself. Like, let me not do this to myself. Please go watch my other live shows. I did a live show with Sajid from Books for My Social Life and with Samaya from Samaya and Booktopia, which is so much fun. Yeah, the challenge for April is to read a book written by an author who wears some type of veil, whether that's a hijab or a niqab or even a turban, however she chooses to cover. And I have a whole Google Docs list that I will link in this description box of like lists of books and authors that you can find some inspo to. I'm definitely thinking about reading what's that book? Oh, by Karuna Riazi. What is it called? It's like a middle school book. What is it called?
I don't know if I've ever heard of that author.
I met her / saw her at, it's called The Gauntlet. That's what it's called. Okay. The Gauntlet by Karuna Riazi. I met her, saw her speak at BookCon. Salam Reads, which is like the imprint of, I think, Simon & Schuster. They specifically just publish like from Muslim authors, and she's half Bengali and half Black, and she wears hijab. And so The Gauntlet is like Jumanji, but middle school Muslim characters. Yeah. So that's what I'm thinking about reading. I've never even read middle grade, so I'm excited to see what that's going to be like. It's just so fun. I love how everybody's commenting and stuff.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts, everybody? Yeah, I think back to our book. Both of us gave Love from A to Z 5 stars. And go read it if you haven't already.
Oh, thank you. You're so nice.
Aw. Quarantine content. Stay safe, wash your hands, stay indoors if you can. I agree. Sana said, I agree that authors should rather say they're worried about misrepresenting people of color in their books. Just like as a cis person, I know that I'd make mistakes representing trans characters. Yeah.
Exactly.
Leon said, I know y'all were talking about this earlier, but I really liked how SK Ali's debut was a subversion on the white savior boy love interest trope. Yeah, SK Ali is a queen. And I actually saw her at BookCon without knowing who she was. And then now I'm just like, can I just go back in time and tell her how amazing I think she is? Like, please. Oh my God. Yeah, we stand Muslim creatives. Also, please, 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 please go support Muslim content creators, Muslim authors, Muslim creatives in general. Like, the only way that we are going to see good representation is by putting our money and our time and our support into the people that are going to create like this content for us. I would love to read so many more books by SK Ali. Would love to see, you know, better representation. I would love to watch movies with a Muslim, you know, filmmaker or director. So yeah, definitely pour your support into the people that are creating the content that you're definitely interested in, because we have a lot more power than we think. We are the consumers. We've got a lot more power going on, and you can definitely choose who you want to support and who you don't want to support, and save yourself the trouble of, you know, the stereotypical Muslim girl loves a white guy. Like, just save yourself from that. Like, just, it's not worth it. Okay, everybody, I think we're gonna end off here. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you, Mina, for co-hosting. You guys were amazing.
Thank you for inviting me.
For more Iqra Trials live shows, we have a lot more coming up. Make sure you subscribe to Mina and follow her everywhere. All her socials will be in the description. And we'll see you guys later. Bye. Stay safe.
Bye, guys.